The edge of darkness. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the ESS Phantom, her dark eyes fixed on the endless void beyond the reinforced transparent steel windows. At the edge of the Kuiper Belt, space took on a different quality. Darker, deeper, more absolute. The distant sun was barely brighter than any other star, and the void between objects stretched beyond human comprehension. The Phantom drifted silently through this darkness, its advanced stealth systems making it virtually invisible to any known form of detection. The ship represented humanity's pinnacle of stealth technology, a vessel designed not to win battles, but to ensure they never happened in the first place. "Captain, we're picking up something unusual." Lieutenant James Rodriguez's voice came through her neural link, calm but tinged with an edge that made Sarah's spine straighten. Rodriguez had been her sensor officer for 3 years, and he wasn't one for false alarms. "Define unusual, Lieutenant," Sarah responded, already moving toward the bridge. Her magnetic boots clicked softly against the metal deck plates, the sound barely audible over the ship's near-silent environmental systems. Well, you should see this yourself, ma'am." The bridge of the Phantom was unlike those seen in ancient science fiction shows. No dramatic view screens or rows of blinking consoles. Instead, each crew member sat within a minimal workstation, their neural links providing direct access to the ship's systems. Holographic displays flickered only where absolutely necessary, minimizing any emissions that might compromise their stealth. Rodriguez's dark features were illuminated by a soft blue glow as he manipulated the sensor data. "It appeared about 20 minutes ago, at the edge of our detection range. At first, I thought it was an instrument error, but," he gestured, and a holographic representation appeared in the center of the bridge. The object was unlike anything Sarah had seen in her 15 years of deep space service. A crystalline structure, roughly cylindrical, but with geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as she watched. It pulsed with a faint energy signature that defied classification. "Location?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the implications racing through her mind. "Approximately 2.3 AU beyond Pluto's current position," Rodriguez replied. "It's maintaining a fixed position relative to the solar system's orbital plane." Dr. Elena Volkov, the ship's chief scientist, was already running analyses. Her augmented eyes flickered with data as she processed the readings. "The energy signature is like nothing in our database, Captain. The patterns suggest artificial origin, but the technology, it's beyond anything humanity has achieved." Sarah felt the weight of command settle more heavily on her shoulders. The Phantom was humanity's early warning system, a shadow in the darkness watching for exactly this kind of discovery. But now that it had happened, the next decisions would echo through human history. "Dr. Volkov, full analysis. Lieutenant Rodriguez, continue passive scans but maintain our emissions blackout. Commander Taylor, plot us a course that will bring us closer while keeping the object between us and the inner system. We don't know if anyone else is watching." Commander David Taylor, her XO and navigation specialist, was already working on the trajectory. His dark skin contrasted with the silver neural interface ports at his temples, legacy of 20 years in deep space service. "Course plotted, Captain. Minimal thrust profile. Estimated arrival in 6 hours." "Execute," Sarah ordered. The Phantom began its glacially slow approach, thrusters firing in microsecond bursts to maintain their stealth profile. Every member of the 40-person crew knew their roles in situations like this. They had trained for first contact scenarios, but the reality was still breathtaking. As they drew closer over the next few hours, the object's true nature became clearer. It was a beacon of some kind, its crystalline structure housing technology that seemed to operate on principles that violated their understanding of physics. "Energy patterns are becoming more distinct," Elena reported, her accent thickening with excitement. "There's definitely a message encoded in the emissions, but it's going to take time to decode. The mathematical principles alone. Time might be something we don't have." Commander Taylor interrupted, his voice tense. "Captain, look at these structural analyses. The beacon's surface shows signs of extreme age, micrometeor impacts, radiation damage. But these patterns, he brought up a new hologram, showing energy flows through the beacon's crystal matrix. They're getting stronger. It's like the beacon is waking up. Sarah studied the data, her augmented mind processing the implications. The beacon had been placed here, at the edge of their solar system, like a sentinel waiting for humanity to reach this point in their development. But was it a warning or a trigger? Dr. Volkov prioritized decoding any warning messages in that signal. Commander Taylor, begin calculating an emergency trajectory back to Earth, but don't implement yet. Lieutenant Rodriguez, I want maximum sensor coverage of the surrounding space. If this beacon is signaling something, I want to know when it arrives. The crew worked in focused silence, each understanding the gravity of their situation. They were humanity's first line of defense, operating in absolute secrecy at the edges of known space. Whatever this beacon represented, they would face it alone. Hours passed as they studied the ancient device. Elena's team made progress with the encoded messages, identifying patterns that suggested a universal mathematical language. But it was Rodriguez who first noticed the change. "Captain," he called out, his voice carrying that same edge from before. The beacon's energy signature just spiked. And there's something else. He paused, double-checking his readings. "We're picking up gravitational anomalies, multiple sources, just at the edge of our detection range." Sarah moved to his station, studying the readings. The anomalies were growing stronger, forming patterns that suggested massive objects moving through space, objects that hadn't been there moments before. "Battle stations," she ordered quietly, her voice carrying through the neural network to every crew member. "Maintain stealth protocols. Whatever's coming, we need to see it first." The Phantom's crew settled into their positions, each person linked directly into the ship's systems, ready to act with computer-enhanced speed and precision. They were about to become humanity's first witnesses to whatever was emerging from the darkness beyond their solar system. As they watched, the gravitational anomalies grew stronger, and space itself seemed to twist and fold. The beacon's pulses had become a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat calling out into the void. And in the darkness beyond their sensors' range, something was answering. Sarah Chen stood on her bridge, surrounded by Earth's finest crew, watching humanity's first contact scenario unfold in real time. Whatever emerged from those gravitational distortions would find not a helpless civilization, but watchers in the dark, ready to defend their species with every tool and tactic at their disposal. The real question was, would it be enough? Silent warning. The gravitational distortions grew stronger, warping the very fabric of space before the Phantom sensors. Dr. Elena Volkov's augmented eyes flickered rapidly as she processed the incoming data, her expression growing increasingly grim. "Captain, the beacon's message. I've decoded the first layer." Elena's voice carried a weight that made everyone on the bridge turn. "It's not just a message, it's a warning." Sarah Chen moved to Elena's station, her steps deliberate despite the growing tension. "Show me." The holographic display materialized between them, showing complex mathematical sequences that gradually resolved into recognizable patterns. Elena highlighted specific sections, her fingers dancing through the light. The message uses universal constants as a base language. Elegant, really. But the content? She paused, searching for words. They call themselves the Harvesters. They seek out civilizations at specific technological thresholds and collect them. Collect. Commander Taylor asked from his station, his hands never stopping their work on potential escape trajectories. The beacon was left by a species that encountered them before. They sacrificed themselves to warn others. Elena's voice cracked slightly. The Harvesters don't just take resources or territory. They absorb entire civilizations, their knowledge, their technology, their very essence, and we just activated their signal. Lieutenant Rodriguez's sensor station suddenly flared with alerts. "Multiple objects emerging from the gravitational distortions, Captain. Massive energy signatures. These ships, they're huge. The holographic display shifted to show the emerging vessels. They defied conventional design, their forms seeming to fold through dimensions that human eyes struggle to process. Each ship was easily the size of Earth's largest space stations, and there were dozens of them. Analysis, Sarah ordered, her voice steady despite the sight before them. Their hull composition is shifting, Rodriguez reported. It's like they're partially out of phase with normal space. Energy readings suggest propulsion systems that manipulate gravity itself. Our most advanced tech would look like stone tools to them. Sarah watched as more ships emerged from the distortions. The Phantom stealth systems were humanity's best achievement in space technology, but would they be enough against beings who could bend space itself? Dr. Volkov, what else can you tell us about their capabilities from the beacon's message? Alina's hands trembled slightly as she brought up more decoded sequences. The harvesters operate on a level of technology that makes most of our scientific understanding obsolete. But she paused, focusing on a particular pattern. There's something here about their sensory capabilities. They don't perceive reality quite the way we do. Explain, Sarah demanded, sensing something crucial. They evolved in a different part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Their primary sensory input comes from gravitational and quantum fluctuations. They see space itself, but Elena's eyes widened. They might be partially blind to certain conventional energy signatures, the kind we specifically designed the Phantom to minimize. Commander Taylor leaned forward. You're saying our stealth systems might actually work better against them than against human technology. Theoretically, their advanced technology might actually work against them here. They're looking for distortions in space-time, quantum-level manipulations. The Phantom deliberately avoids affecting those factors. Sarah absorbed this information, her augmented mind racing through the implications. Their mission had always been to observe and report, but now they held perhaps the only advantage humanity might have against this threat. How long until they reach scanning range of the inner system? She asked Rodriguez. At their current speed, less than 48 hours. Their ships aren't just fast. They're warping space to reduce the effective distance. Sarah made her decision. Dr. Volkov, continue decoding that message. Focus on anything that might give us tactical advantages. Commander Taylor, plot a series of short FTL jumps back to the inner system. We need to stay ahead of them without leaving an obvious trail. Lieutenant Rodriguez, I want continuous analysis of their sensor suites. If they show any sign of detecting us, I need to know immediately. As her crew acknowledged the orders, Sarah faced the harder question. Their standing orders were absolute. Maintain stealth, observe, and report only in the most dire circumstances. Breaking communication silence could reveal Earth's position to the harvesters, but failing to warn Earth of what was coming. Captain, Elena called out softly. There's more in the beacon's message. The species that left it, they tried fighting the harvesters directly. Conventional warfare was useless. But they discovered something. The harvesters can be confused, misdirected. Their advanced perceptions can be turned against them. Sarah's eyes narrowed. How? They see patterns in space-time itself. If we can create false patterns, manipulate their perceptions. Elena's voice grew stronger as she worked through the implications. We might not be able to fight them, but we might be able to fool them. And we have the perfect ship for deception. Commander Taylor added, understanding dawning in his eyes. Sarah nodded slowly. They couldn't fight this threat directly. Humanity wasn't ready for that kind of war. But they could buy Earth time to prepare, and perhaps more importantly, they could gather intelligence on an enemy that had never faced human ingenuity before. New mission, she announced, her voice carrying to every crew member through their neural links. We're going to haunt these harvesters, show them that the darkness they're so comfortable with has teeth they never expected. Make them question every shadow, doubt every reading. And most importantly, we're going to make them look exactly where we want them to look, away from Earth. The crew's response came through the neural net as a wave of determined acknowledgement. They had trained for years to be invisible, to watch without being seen. Now they would use those same skills not just to observe, but to protect. The harvester ships continued their emergence from the gravitational distortions, their alien forms casting impossible shadows in space. They had come expecting to find another civilization to absorb into their collective. Instead, they would face an enemy they couldn't quite see, couldn't quite catch, an enemy that would turn their own advanced perceptions into a weapon against them. The hunt was about to begin, and humanity's hunters were about to become the prey. But they had no idea that their prey had learned to hide in the dark long ago, and had turned that darkness into a weapon of its own. The hunt begins. The Phantom hung motionless in the shadow of a comet, its advanced stealth systems rendering it nearly indistinguishable from the surrounding space. Through the ship's sensors, the crew watched as 3 harvester scout vessels passed nearby, their reality warping drives leaving ripples in the fabric of space-time. They're searching in patterns, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his voice barely above a whisper despite the impossibility of being heard. But they're missing obvious spaces, areas our ships would naturally use for cover. Sarah Chen nodded, watching the tactical display. The harvesters' arrogance was becoming apparent. They were so focused on detecting advanced technology that they overlooked simpler hiding places. Time to test our theory. Dr. Volkov, is the package ready? Yes, Captain. Elena's augmented eyes flickered as she finalized the calculations. The probe is modified according to the beacon's specifications. It should create the kind of quantum disturbance they're looking for. The package was elegantly simple, a standard probe modified to generate specific patterns of quantum interference, the kind the harvesters use to detect advanced civilizations. But this probe had a surprise inside. Launch when ready, Sarah ordered. Lieutenant Rodriguez, prepare for microburst transmission to the secondary package. The probe slipped away from the Phantom, its conventional thrusters leaving no quantum wake for the harvesters to detect. It drifted toward the outer edges of the comet's debris field, exactly where a fleeing ship might hide. The reaction was immediate. One of the harvester scouts changed course, its impossible geometry twisting, as it moved to investigate the quantum signature. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The first part of their plan was working. They're scanning the probe, Rodriguez reported. Energy readings are massive. They're using some kind of quantum resonance technology. Now, Sarah commanded. Elena activated the probe's secondary systems. Instead of the advanced technology the harvesters expected to find, the probe released a carefully calibrated burst of ordinary radiation, the kind naturally produced by solar wind interaction with cometary ice. The effect on the harvester ship was dramatic. Its scan, tuned for quantum-level detection, was overwhelmed by the sudden burst of simple radiation. The ship's form actually flickered, its phase-shifted hull momentarily becoming fully visible. That hurt them, Commander Taylor observed, his hands dancing over his console as he recorded every detail of the harvester's reaction. Their advanced perception works against them. They're so sensitive to quantum states that a strong enough conventional signal overwhelms their sensors. Like shining a bright light in someone's night vision goggles, Rodriguez added, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. Sarah watched as the harvester scout retreated, its movements now more cautious. They'll adapt, she warned. But now we know we can affect them. Dr. Volkov, how many more probes can we modify? 6, using our current supplies. But Captain, Elena hesitated. I've been analyzing their response patterns. Each time we reveal ourselves, even indirectly, they learn more about how to track us. We're racing against their ability to adapt. Sarah understood the implications. Each trick would only work a few times before the harvesters developed countermeasures. They needed to make every deception count. New contacts, Rodriguez announced suddenly. 5 more scout ships entering the region. They're moving in a search pattern I haven't seen before. The tactical display showed the new arrivals spreading out in a complex 3-dimensional grid, their sensors overlapping in ways that left few blind spots. The harvesters were learning, adapting their search patterns to account for their newfound vulnerability to conventional signals. "They're hurting us," Commander Taylor realized. "These new search patterns, they're designed to force any hiding ships toward specific channels of space." Sarah studied the pattern and saw he was right. The harvesters were creating a net of overlapping sensor coverage, slowly closing in on their section of space. But in their arrogance, they still assumed their prey would think like them, move like them. "Prepare for emergency maneuver Sigma 9, she ordered. "Commander Taylor, plot us a course directly through the densest part of the comet's tail." Taylor's eyes widened. "Captain, at our current velocity, the ice particles could damage our hull." "Exactly. The harvesters are looking for ships trying to avoid detection. They're not expecting anyone to deliberately risk destruction." Sarah's voice was firm. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, divert power from the quantum dampeners to conventional shields. Dr. Volkov, prepare to launch 3 modified probes on my mark." The crew worked quickly, understanding their captain's strategy. The Phantom's stealth systems normally worked by minimizing all types of emissions and interactions. By deliberately passing through the comet's tail, they would create a highly visible disturbance, but one that would appear natural to the harvester's quantum-focused sensors. "Course plotted," Taylor reported. "We'll have 30 seconds of exposure in the densest part of the tail." "Shields reconfigured," Rodriguez added. "But we'll be visible to conventional sensors during the passage." Sarah nodded. "That's counting on. Ready probes for scattered launch pattern Delta. Execute on my mark." The Phantom accelerated slowly, aligning itself with the comet's tail. The harvester search pattern was closing in, their ships moving with the precision of machines. At just the right moment, Sarah gave the command. "Mark." The Phantom plunged into the stream of ice and dust trailing the comet. Simultaneously, 3 modified probes launched in different directions, each programmed to activate their quantum signatures at precisely calculated moments. The effect was chaos. The harvester ships reacted to multiple quantum signatures appearing simultaneously, while their sensors struggled to interpret the very visible but seemingly natural disturbance of the Phantom's passage through the comet's tail. "Multiple harvester ships altering course," Rodriguez reported, his voice tense as ice particles pinged off their shields. They're splitting up, investigating each signal separately. "Shields holding at 60%, Taylor added. 10 seconds to clear the tail." Sarah watched as their plan unfolded. The harvesters, for all their advanced technology, were following predictable logic. They couldn't ignore the quantum signatures from the probes, but the visible disturbance in the comet's tail registered as a natural phenomenon to their exotic sensors. The Phantom emerged from the comet's tail, its hull scored but intact. As they watched, the harvester ships scattered, their careful search pattern broken as they investigated the false signals. In the confusion, the Phantom slipped away, using conventional thrusters that were nearly invisible to the harvester's quantum-based detection systems. "Reset quantum dampeners," Sarah ordered once they were clear. "Status report." "Hull integrity at 92%, Taylor reported. "Stealth systems returning to optimal configuration." 3 harvester ships are still investigating the probe signals, Rodriguez added. 2 more are analyzing the comet's tail disturbance. They seem confused. Belena's voice carried a note of triumph. The beacon's data was correct. They rely so heavily on their advanced sensors that they struggle to process simple physical phenomena. "We can use that." Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They had proven that humanity's primitive technology could be an advantage against the harvester's overwhelming technological superiority. But she knew this was just the beginning. "Maintain course for the inner system," she ordered. "We've shown them we can hurt them. Now we need to make them afraid of the dark." Shadow games. The Phantom drifted through the rings of Saturn, its hull coated in ice particles that helped mask its already minimal signature. The giant planet's electromagnetic field provided additional cover, but they weren't hiding anymore. They were hunting. "Harvester patrol approaching," Rodriguez reported. 3 ships, standard search formation. They're moving faster now, more aggressive in their scanning patterns. Sarah Chen studied the tactical display, noting how the harvester ships had modified their behavior over the past week. Gone was the leisurely arrogance of their early searches. Now they moved like predators who had learned to fear the shadows. They're learning, Commander Taylor observed. Each encounter teaches them more about our capabilities. And our limitations, Elena added, her augmented eyes tracking complex data streams. They've started modulating their quantum sensors to filter out standard radiation. Our probe tactics won't work much longer. Sarah nodded. The game of cat and mouse had evolved into something more complex. The harvesters were adapting, but so were they. Each encounter was a deadly dance of technology and tactics, with Earth's future hanging in the balance. New plan, Sarah announced. We're going to use Saturn itself against them. Dr. Volkov, what's the status of the resonance device? Elena's hands moved through holographic data. Ready, but untested. If my calculations are correct, it should create a cascading disturbance in Saturn's magnetic field. The effect on their quantum-sensitive systems could be significant, and possibly fatal to us as well, Taylor warned. We're shielded against conventional electromagnetic phenomena, not the kind of quantum cascade you're proposing. Sarah felt the weight of command bearing down. They had spent days laying the groundwork for this operation, planting modified probes at key points in Saturn's rings. Now they would find out if their biggest gamble would pay off. Lieutenant Rodriguez, status of the Harvester Fleet. Main fleet holding position near Jupiter. These patrols are their forward elements, but... He paused, rechecking his data. Captain, their search patterns have changed. They're not just looking for us anymore. They're establishing a perimeter, preparing for the arrival of something bigger. The collection fleet, Elena said quietly. According to the beacon's data, this is their pattern. Scout, contain, then harvest. Sarah's jaw tightened. They had bought Earth precious time with their guerrilla tactics, but now the endgame was approaching. It was time to show the harvesters exactly what humanity was capable of. Execute Operation Lighthouse, she ordered. All stations, prepare for maximum gravitational stress. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each understanding their role in what might be their final mission. They had trained for years to be invisible, but now they would use that skill to orchestrate a trap on a planetary scale. The resonance device activated silently, its effects invisible to conventional sensors. But in the quantum realm that the harvesters perceived, it was like lighting a fuse. The device's influence spread through Saturn's magnetic field, creating subtle distortions that would be irresistible to the harvesters' advanced sensors. Patrol ships are altering course, Rodriguez reported. They've detected the quantum fluctuations, all 3 vessels moving to investigate. Additional contacts, Taylor added. 5 more harvester ships breaking from the Jupiter perimeter. They're moving fast. Sarah watched as the trap began to close. The harvesters, despite their caution, couldn't ignore such a massive quantum signature. Their own nature compelled them to investigate. Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Deploy the remaining probes. Around Saturn, dozens of modified probes activated simultaneously. Each had been precisely positioned over the past week, their conventional drives allowing them to move undetected through the rings. Now they created a web of quantum disturbances, each tuned to a different frequency. The effect on the harvester ships was immediate and dramatic. Their phase-shifted hulls flickered as their sensors tried to process the overwhelming input. More ships arrived, drawn by the disturbance, each one caught in the same trap. Quantum cascade building in Saturn's magnetosphere, Elena reported, her voice tense. Harvester ships showing signs of systemic disruption. Their quantum-based systems are starting to resonate with the field. Our shields? Sarah asked. Holding, but degrading. We have maybe 10 minutes before the cascade affects our systems too. Sarah nodded. Enough time. Lieutenant Rodriguez, prepare the package for delivery. The package was their masterstroke. a compilation of everything they had learned about the harvesters, encoded in a burst transmission that would reach Earth just ahead of the quantum cascade's peak. It contained the beacon's warnings, their tactical observations, and most importantly, the weaknesses they had discovered in the harvesters' seemingly invincible technology. Multiple harvester ships showing critical instability, Taylor reported. Their hull phase shifting is failing. Some are starting to break up. Sarah watched as the mighty alien vessels began to tear themselves apart, their advanced technology becoming their undoing. The quantum cascade was having a far more devastating effect than they had anticipated, but there was no time for analysis. Shield failure in 3 minutes, Alina warned. The cascade is accelerating beyond predicted levels. Transmission ready, Rodriguez announced. But Captain, at this range, sending it will reveal our position. Sarah took a deep breath. They had always known this mission might be one way. Send it. Full power to the broadcast. The Phantom's communications array powered up for the first time in months, sending a tight beam transmission toward Earth. In the quantum-saturated space around them, it was like lighting a flare in a dark room. Transmission complete, Rodriguez reported. Multiple harvester ships locking onto our position. The survivors are moving to intercept. How many? Sarah asked. 3 ships, still partially phase-shifted. They'll reach us before our shields fail. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Perfect. Commander Taylor, plot an intercept course. Let's introduce them to another human concept, taking your enemies with you when you go. The Phantom's engines ignited fully for the first time since their mission began. They were no longer hiding, no longer playing games in the shadows. Now they would show the harvesters that humanity's guardians knew how to end their watch with honor. As they accelerated toward the approaching alien ships, Sarah looked at her crew. The best humanity had to offer, each facing their final moments with determination and courage. They had done their duty. Earth would be warned, would be prepared, and the harvesters would learn that claiming humanity would cost them dearly. It has been an honor, she said simply as the Phantom charged toward its final battle, leaving Saturn's rings glowing with quantum fire behind them. Legacy of the Silent. The space around Saturn had become a quantum storm, reality itself distorting as the cascade effect reached its peak. The Phantom, its stealth systems now fully powered down, drove straight toward the 3 surviving harvester ships like an arrow of human defiance. Impact in 30 seconds, Commander Taylor announced, his hand steady on the controls despite the growing vibrations shuddering through the hull. Their phase shifting is still partially active. A direct hit might not be enough. Then we'll give them more than that, Sarah Chen replied, her voice carrying the cold certainty of absolute commitment. Dr. Volkov, status of the core. Alina's augmented eyes flickered with calculations. Ready, Captain. Converting our reactor to quantum resonance. It's not exactly stable. It doesn't need to be stable, Sarah said. It just needs to work once. Lieutenant Rodriguez, confirm our transmission reached Earth. Confirmed, Captain. Full data package received and acknowledged. They know what's coming. Rodriguez paused, then added quietly. And they know what we did here. Sarah nodded, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. Their mission, their real mission, was complete. Earth had the beacon's warnings, their tactical observations, and most importantly, proof that the harvesters could be fought. What happened next was epilogue. Harvester ships attempting to establish quantum lock, Taylor reported. They're trying to disable our engines with some kind of spatial distortion. Let them get close, Sarah ordered. Everyone, prepare for Pattern Omega. We're going to show them one last human surprise. The crew worked with practiced precision, each understanding their role in these final moments. They had trained for years to be the silent guardians of humanity, and now they would prove worthy of that trust. Quantum lock engaging, Alina reported. Our engines are starting to lose power, but the reactor modification is ready. The harvester ships drew closer, their impossible geometries twisting as they attempted to ensnare the Phantom in their quantum field. They still didn't understand what they were dealing with, couldn't comprehend that humanity's primitive technology could be turned into a weapon against their advanced systems. "They're trying to analyze us," Rodriguez said, monitoring the alien signals. "Their quantum sensors are attempting to map our internal structure. They still think we're hiding some advanced technology they can harvest." Sarah's lips curved in a grim smile. "Let's show them what they've really found." "Dr. Volkov, initiate reactor overload." "Commander Taylor, all remaining power to forward momentum." The Phantom's reactor core began to pulse with unnatural energy as Elena's modifications took effect. They weren't trying to contain the power anymore. They were turning their entire ship into a quantum bomb. 15 seconds to contact," Taylor announced. "Harvester ships are beginning to detect the reactor changes. They're attempting to withdraw." "Too late," Sarah said softly. "Much too late." The space around them writhed with competing forces, the Harvester's quantum lock trying to hold them, the cascade effect from Saturn still propagating outward, and now the Phantom's reactor adding its own chaos to the mix. 10 seconds. Taylor counted down. 9, 8. Sarah looked at her crew one last time, seeing in their faces the same determination that burned in her own heart. They had sworn to protect Earth, to stand guard in the darkness against whatever threats might come. Now they would fulfill that oath in the most absolute way possible. 7, 6, 5. Reactor reaching critical quantum resonance. Elena reported. "The containment field is already failing." 4, 3. "Signal from the Harvesters," Rodriguez said. I think they're trying to communicate. They finally realize what we're doing." 2. "Humanity sends its regards," Sarah whispered. 1. The Phantom's reactor detonated, but this was no ordinary explosion. Elena's modifications had turned their power core into a quantum disruption device of unprecedented scale. The blast caught all 3 Harvester ships at point-blank range, their partially phase-shifted states making them especially vulnerable. The effect was catastrophic. The quantum resonance turned the Harvester's own advanced technology against them, their reality warping drives becoming points of cascade failure. Their ships didn't just explode. They unraveled, torn apart at the quantum level by forces they themselves had mastered but never truly understood. The Phantom's final moment was recorded by long-range sensors near Jupiter, a brief, brilliant flare that distorted space itself, leaving behind a quantum anomaly that would make that region of space dangerous to Harvester ships for decades to come. In the aftermath, as the quantum storm around Saturn slowly dissipated, the Harvester fleet received its first true setback in centuries of expansion. Their forward elements destroyed, their confidence shaken, they faced a choice. Press forward against an enemy that had proven far more dangerous than expected, or withdraw to reconsider their approach. But more importantly, Earth had received the Phantom's final transmission. In secure facilities across the planet, military leaders and scientists pored over the data, learning everything their silent guardians had discovered about humanity's new enemy. They learned that the Harvester's greatest strength, their advanced quantum-based technology, could become their greatest weakness. They learned that human primitive technology, properly applied, could overcome seemingly insurmountable advantages. And they learned that courage, creativity, and sacrifice could change the course of history. The crew of the Phantom became legends, their names etched into humanity's memory as the first to stand against the darkness that threatened their species. But their greatest legacy was hope, proof that humanity could face the impossible and find a way to prevail. Years later, when the Harvesters finally launched their full invasion, they found not a helpless civilization ripe for harvesting, but a prepared and determined enemy. An enemy that had learned to turn shadows into weapons, to make strength from weakness, and to face the darkness without fear. And in the great space battles that followed, Earth's ships carried the Phantom's designation number on their hulls, a reminder that humanity's guardians had not died in vain, but had instead lit a path to victory through the darkest night their species had ever faced. The silent guardians were gone, but their watch would never truly end. They had shown humanity how to fight back against the impossible, and in doing so, had changed the destiny of their entire species. In the end, that was worth any sacrifice.